Cambodia, home to the largest religious structure on earth with a booming economy in Southeast Asia. Today we're going over everything you need to know from an investment point of view, everything that I personally learned after a month doing boots on the ground research. We'll be covering the Citizenship by Investment program, Golden Visa, real estate, and really a broad overview of demographics, geography, and the political structure. Without any further ado, let's begin. So the 5 key sections we'll be covering will be firstly, geography and natural resources, second, demographics and emerging market challenges that go along with some of the demographic trends with the neighboring countries, Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos. Then economy, business, opportunities and foreign policy. I'll also be going over actually a bit of the structure of the Cambodian political system there. And then number 4, investment migration, citizenship by investment, and residency by investment. 2 different programs. You have the Cambodian My Second Home program and the actual Citizenship by Investment program that I'll be covering. Throughout this, by the way, I'll have timestamps down below in the description, so you can skip ahead or back depending on the section you would like to see. And then lastly, we'll do takeaways and then my personal perspective after a month in Cambodia. Firstly, geography of Cambodia. You can see here the overall map. So location importance, basically it's bordered here by Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos. Influenced mainly by Indian, Chinese, and European society throughout history. So obviously the French colony that came into Cambodia was very, very important throughout the history, fascinating history with the Khmer Rouge. And I'll be discussing that a little bit further throughout the video as well. So the Mekong River is very, very important when you actually look at the geography here because number 1, it provides a ton of jobs actually overall, not just in Cambodia, but across the entire Mekong River. Up to 10 million people actually have their personal livelihoods and the livelihoods of their family based on this one body of water, and then up to 25% of the world's freshwater fish actually is in the Mekong River, so that's very interesting, and that's actually what it provides, to the rest of the world. And then the Paria Sihanoukville port, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, that is super important. It's like 90% of the exports of Cambodia actually go out through there. And incredibly important when you look at the actual real estate opportunities in Cambodia. A lot of people are talking about that area. I won't cover real estate too much on this video. If you want me to do a deep dive video on that, I would be happy to. I'm probably going to be covering Vietnam in detail when it comes to real estate opportunities. But since Cambodia is part of the Regional Economic Cooperation Partnership with China, the RECP, I may have just said that wrong, but that's very, very vital. They're actually relying heavily on that for a lot of the developments in the country. You see in Phnom Penh and other key cities like in Siem Reap, which has Angkor Wat, an ancient historical sites that I absolutely loved visiting. It was beautiful. China's investing a lot there, and a lot of other countries are adding in there, but Cambodia is relying heavily on this partnership. So moving on. Cambodia's natural resources. Mineral deposits include bauxite, copper, gold, iron ore, and gemstones. Basically, all of these can be kind of tapped into, and the current regime is really focusing on this heavily, so tapping into the natural resources. Along with this, as far as agriculture goes, Cambodia is abundant. If you travel throughout the country, it's very wild, kind of almost swampy-esque, you would say. A ton of rice is actually grown in Cambodia, and then along with that, they have cassava, rubber, and sugarcane. The water supply is really abundant here. The only issue, which I'll be getting onto with the demographics, is some of the rural areas in Cambodia do have issues with clean water supply and sanitation. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. So 40% of doctors and 75% of specialized physicians actually work in Phnom Penh, being the capital of Cambodia, meaning that you have a giant distribution there, and then where you have 80% of citizens actually living in rural areas. So you have a bit of a Pareto distribution there where 20% of the population is living in the capital, 80% of it's living in rural areas, yet we have a high isolation of the actual skilled workers in the medical field being in the actual capital, which makes sense. So a lot of people have to actually go to Phnom Penh. I remember being in Siem Reap. I spent a lot of time there, and you have all these people from surroundings, very, very small towns and villages that are working in the agricultural sector, that all hop on, like 10 people per family hop on a bus or something like that, hop on a bike. You'll see like 6 people, 5 people on one bike, which you see is very, very common in emerging markets. Makes family very close. So that's great. But they all go to the hospitals, and then they basically camp out there during the day. They, maybe they have a family member in there. Maybe they're literally waiting almost in line to actually enter the facilities because healthcare is a bit scarce in places outside of Phnom Penh. So a lot of people even go to Siem Reap, and there's actually some very, very nice hospitals there, but it's just the availability of these skilled workers in the medical field is not quite there yet. But this does always provide, for an opportunity. So bringing in more people that are actually skilled in the medical field, along with potentially opportunity with, let's say, like a water sanitation business to help people have it be a win-win is very, very interesting. I also see that a lot in Africa as well when it comes to water sanitation, because we do have the technology, we just don't have the distribution, especially in a lot of these frontier and emerging markets. So when we're analyzing the three different demographics here between Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam, we'll start off with the top. Vietnam, absolutely love this country, 97 million people. I've been to all of these three and a few others here in the ASEAN nations. This video is a continuation on that, by the way. The previous video I posted on the channel was the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Alliance, which is incredibly important when you're looking at emerging market investing in the world, where China is interested in, also where the US is interested in, kind of where there's smoke, there's fire, if you will. So Vietnam has 97 million, Thailand 71 million, and Cambodia 16 million, where the population is obviously the smallest out of all these three. And then the life expectancy in Cambodia is about 70 years old. A big impact to this actually was the Khmer Rouge. So a lot of people, if you visit, you have to pay respects, obviously, to the killing field. The country has a very, very troubled history, but the people are thriving. People are very, very happy there now. But I highly recommend watching the movie. What's it called? First They Killed My Father. Really, really interesting. It depicts a lot of the things, especially if you're not that familiar with Cambodia. That obviously has an ancient history with the Khmer Empire, with Angkor Wat. I highly recommend you visit and really study what happened there. I think a lot of people, especially in the West, are not that familiarized with what we did there, what France has done there, what a lot of these other countries have done in Cambodia, Vietnam, and this whole area, but also the ancient history when it comes to Angkor Wat and the Khmer Empire. So very interesting. Cambodia's population pyramid reflects a young population with obviously high fertility rates, and then the majority of the population. So when you have a traditional population pyramid, you have the majority of the population at the base of the pyramid, and then the smallest amounts obviously at the top. The issue we're seeing in modern society is this is actually the first time ever in history where it's flipped. So you have a lot of people in the retirement class, so the older generations, and then people not actually having babies. So you have the inverted pyramid. This is actually the first time we've ever seen that. And then for a place like Thailand, for example, or Mexico, a lot of these places where they're kind of in between, you have a siloed pyramid, meaning it's literally just straight up and down. So you have the same quantity of people, basically, like, let's say from 1 to 5, than you do in, let's say, 70 to 75. So that's actually an apparent issue, meaning we don't have new people entering the workforce. So either you're going to have to solve that problem by maybe immigrating a bunch of people to the country, increasing the amount of new babies being born, or something else that we haven't quite thought of yet. But this is a very interesting problem. If you want a bit more on that, the geopolitical strategist Peter Zion, he talks a lot about this, so kind of interesting there. But Thailand's population pyramid reflects an even distribution across age groups. As I said, if you actually look at it, it's basically siloed, lower fertility rates and higher life expectancy, and portion of the older age group is larger than Cambodia for sure. So Vietnam's population pyramid shows very similar to Thailand. Actually, I won't cover too much on that because I'm going to be doing a video deep dive just on Vietnam here in a bit. So then the main factor driving the difference is relatively obvious, but basically economic developments, healthcare, education, and cultural norms. And then Laos has a population of about 7 million population. When you're looking at the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is about 10 countries, the only one that's in Southeast Asia that is not in ASEAN is Timor-Leste, and they're looking at adding them to the membership. Some of the people don't really pay that much attention to are Laos, Myanmar, which is currently in a civil war, and then let's see, Bhutan as well. Bhutan is an interesting kingdom that not a lot of people actually know about, but a very, very wealthy country actually. Okay, now moving on to the economic side. I won't spend too much time on this. I find the more macro overview of it being an emerging market play very, very important. When it comes to economic recovery, last year, real growth surpassed 5%, meaning nominal GDP growth, and this brought them back to levels that they were seeing before the pandemic actually hit. And all of this GDP growth is really primary based, I would say, on tourism, some financial service sector boom. Actually, there's a lot of interesting businesses here in the fintech space. A lot of other foreign nationals coming in and actually setting up business in Cambodia, but partnering with locals. And if you visit, you'll see a lot of interesting banks that you see across Southeast Asia, but also you see some domestic that have popped up in Cambodia. And then obviously also agricultural development and new technology entering in this market, which is still very, very analog and very old school. So there's always kind of arbitrage opportunity there. Let's say, you have extremely advanced agricultural opportunities, let's say in Vietnam, in Dalat. I'll be covering that in a future video, the coffee market, and in China as well. Obviously, the agricultural sector, given the technology, is very, very advanced. And then if you bring that into an emerging market country where it's mostly analog, things are kind of done in an old school way, if you will, you have a lot of opportunity where you can kind of have a value add business in the agricultural sector. So tourism and hospitality received a boost earlier this year because Cambodia actually, I saw a lot of these signs and billboards up all around the country for the Southeast Asia Games and ASEAN Para Games. So they hosted it this year. Very, very interesting. I'd love to see that. Obviously, you have the Olympics, but then it's interesting to see, other countries competing when it comes to sports. One that's very interesting, actually, in Central Asia is the World Nomad Games, where basically all these nomadic tribes from like Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, they all compete together. That's actually fascinating. I would love to make it to that next year, but I digress. All right, so the economy in 2023, this is where I'll touch a little bit on the political outlook and then recent economic policy. So basically, they've obviously been focused on just growth, as you do in an emerging market country. And when you have kind of a demographic boom, you see a lot of new babies everywhere. And you kind of feel that energy when you're in Cambodia of abundance, growth, and fertility. So you have tax incentives for foreign investors, establishing special economic zones, and the increase in investments in infrastructure projects, mainly like roads, bridges, these things in the capital, Phnom Penh. You do see a ton of construction, lots. I actually, part of my background when I was very young, like I would say 15 to 18, 19, I did concrete construction. So I know this industry very, very well, especially growing up. Worked like 80-hour work weeks just in concrete construction. So I know what it takes to build roads, to build sidewalks, all these things. So it's very, very interesting to see really diversity really in the actual workforce. So you see a lot of women and men, which is something you do not see in other countries, especially Western countries, when it comes to construction, concrete, building different tram systems. So it was interesting to just pick up that. Obviously not something that you would really find if you're looking online, but that's part of why I like to go to emerging markets to actually do boots on the ground research and understand what exactly is happening and pick up on the differences in different countries and kind of contrast and compare. So political outlook, the constitutional monarchy. This was basically all established after 1933, so it was a monarchy before this, but it wasn't a constitutional monarchy. The king is basically the head of states, and then the prime minister is the head of the governments. And this 1933 constitution declared Cambodia to be an independent, sovereign, peaceful, permanently neutral, non-aligned country. Very beautifully said. All right, moving on. So we'll cover this, and then we'll do the migration programs, and then we'll wrap it up kind of with my personal perspective, and we'll call it a day. So firstly, setting up a business in Cambodia. This is very interesting. There's a lot of interesting opportunities here. They've changed the law, so especially foreign property ownership, with which if anyone wants help with any of these things, the migration program, just Cambodia in general, obviously you can reach out to us. The website's investglobal.io. It'll be linked down below. But setting up a business here, they've changed the law on, especially since 2010. It's gotten a lot better. And foreign property ownership as well. So again, I'm not going to go too much in detail into foreign property ownership, besides the fact that basically you can own something above the first floor, which is very, very rare in Southeast Asia. And then they've also changed. So for example, in Thailand, it's like foreigners can only own like 40% of a building, so meaning the actual apartment units, whereas in Cambodia, they changed it to be 70%. So setting up a business, let's get started with this. Acquire a business visa, number one. So you can do this either online or personally when you're there. It's obviously always easier to do it when you're there and you find the right fixers, you find the right people, which is again something we help with. Then you have to rent an office. Physical address verification is important. So you'll actually have the police coming into your place of business, if you will. It can just be an office, and you can get an office building, or rather an office space in a building in Phnom Penh for, let's say, like $100 a month. So not very much, to be honest. And then you go to more rural areas, it's even cheaper, but obviously you can scale that up as well. Then register a business that's a 1 month time frame, and then acquire work permits. Lastly, you should probably do some tax planning, which I would recommend working with a local on this. But it's around 10% basically, so not too bad. Then depending on how you structure it, obviously. So a little bit of a perspective here. So the economic developments between the 90s and 2022, they basically saw a lot of trade pacts between China, South Korea, and other countries, including Japan as well, actually. So you see a lot of foreign influence. And like I said before, so this is one of the countries that's actually very, very interesting for doing business because foreign investors can actually own 100% of the business, whereas in a lot of other countries, you have to have 50-50 partnership with local people, but things can be done a bit differently in Cambodia if you know how to structure it, if you know what I mean. So qualified investment projects. Basically, we'll run through these pretty quickly and then we'll move on here. So special tax depreciation. So this is equivalent of 40% of the production materials. Should a business qualify for QIP status, which is just the qualified investment projects. And then you have tax exemption, so a holiday for 3 years. And then it starts when you receive the final registration certificate, which is also something you need to do after you set up a business. And you should definitely work with a local on this. I can help you if you need to find local partners, but very important that you're working with someone that actually speaks the Khmer language, not Cambodian. It's Khmer that knows the history, knows the foreign relations, if you will, how things are done in the country. And then they also need to register with the Council of Development of Cambodia. And then ongoing tax exemptions. After 3 years of tax holiday, there's another 3-year priority period. Basically, that's an ongoing 3-year tax exemption, and the duration depends on the type of project and investment, like quantity of capital, if you will. And then lastly, the special economic zones. These are basically built all around the country. The ports is one. There's actually another kind of trade ports, if you will, that's more, I guess, aerial, but also kind of some maritime stuff going on in Phnom Penh that is connected with the port that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. That's also interesting when it comes to real estate. And a lot of people from Phnom Penh actually go there to vacation. If you go kind of, let's see, in the southwest of the country, that's when you can go to some of the islands, whereas you would want to go to the northwest if you're going from Phnom Penh to Siem Reap, which is where I spent a significant amount of time. And then these basically have a special privileges for industries that bring in foreign direct investment. All right, to be honest, I don't want to touch too much on this just because it's a little bit of a touchy subject, but the basic picture is Cambodia is much more aligned with China than it is the US. Literally makes sense because of the actual geography of the country, is closer to China. Obviously, they still have good relations with European countries and the United States, but that's the gist of it. I won't spend too much time on that. If you have individual questions, obviously you can contact us, but I digress. All right, lastly, Cambodia's migration program. So you have citizenship by investments, and then you have the CM2H program. Firstly, citizenship by investments. This is the basic rundown. Again, this is not legal financial advice. None of this video is. If you want any help with this, either you can contact someone, look it up online, or since I spent a decent amount of time in the country, I can help you get connected with the right people in Cambodia. So the requirements are same with pretty much any citizenship by investment program. You have to pass a criminal background check, police clearance letter in Cambodia, so you have to physically be there for that, and then be above 18 years old and of sound mind and good health. Hope you are. And then investment options are $300,000 in improved investments. This is what you see in a lot of countries, similar to like in, for example, Turkey or some of the Caribbean programs, basically. You're really not the best real estate opportunities. It's where they want you to invest. So typically that's not exactly the best bang for your buck, if you will. But the other option, if you don't want to have a physical asset in Cambodia, you can just do a $250,000 US donation. After that, the benefits of this would basically be the ability to live, work, and buy land freely across the country without having to acquire a visa to enter. All right. And then when it comes to visa-free access, also with the passports, obviously we get the Cambodian passport. It looks a little bit different than if you're actually naturally born in Cambodia. The citizenship by investment passport you acquire is a little bit different, so we can cover that more if you want individual help. But the visa-free access to around 50 countries, including all of the Association of Southeast Asian Nation member countries. Moving on to the CM2H, so the Cambodian My Second Home program. This is $100,000 in an approved investment project. So some of these are actually not even physical real estate. So there's other potential projects you could put this money into. But the benefits of this are it's basically a 10-year golden visa. You can naturalize after 5 years. Again, the benefits of being naturalized into the country, in my opinion, really it's land and property ownership. But the land especially, it's not that easy to own land. You can really just lease land there if you're not a resident or a citizen. So that's an opportunity because the agricultural sector is definitely booming in Cambodia. There's a lot of opportunities there. And then as we covered earlier in this video with the natural resources, there's a lot of interesting opportunities that really just haven't been tapped into. Obviously, you need approval for all these things. Not legal or financial advice. I have to emphasize that. So beyond that, there actually are no fiscal presence requirements. So typically that's the case, obviously, with golden visas. You don't actually have to physically be there. Whereas if you have a physical visa, or rather physical residency, you have to reside in the country. So actually physically being there versus kind of planting a flag, if you will, in the country, saying I have a golden visa here so I can come in and out as I please, and then also kind of use that as a mobility asset. All right, so takeaways in my personal point of view. Well, to be honest, I really respect the country of Cambodia. I absolutely loved my time there. I highly recommend you travel, spend some time in Phnom Penh, definitely visit Angkor Wat. It's absolutely beautiful. And then I think next time I would definitely spend a lot more time in the southwest of the country near that port I was discussing, just because there's a lot of interesting maritime trade opportunities there. But yeah, absolutely love Cambodia. Very interesting language. It's a bit of a culture shock if you mainly spend time, let's say, in like Vietnam, Philippines. It's a completely different type of language, right? So Vietnam, similar to the English alphabet, but you have different accents, so different inflection marks. Whereas in Cambodia, Khmer is a completely different type of language. Like it looks like almost like Georgian, or a completely different type of language, completely different alphabet. So fascinating. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions, any help like that, anything you need, I can either clarify down below in the comments, or you can just visit the website, investglobal.io. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.